If you're working in cybersecurity today, I mean, you know the feeling. You're just drowning in data.
Oh, absolutely. It's a constant deluge of noise.
Yeah, you're buried alive under this mountain of high-volume alerts, and that signal-to-noise ratio is just, it's completely broken.
It is. Security teams all over the world are spending huge resources investigating what, turns out to be nothing, a false alarm.
And that's just the operational cost, right? The
That,
really critical cost is the missed breaches,
yeah,
because the actual threat was hidden somewhere in all that static.
it's the very definition of an unsustainable defense model. I mean, you can't hire enough people to go through every single alert from these generic low-fidelity feeds.
Right.
And that exhaustion, that operational exhaustion, translates directly into massive organizational risk. For a lot of teams, relying on slow or generalized threat intel feels like a necessary evil, but it doesn't solve that core problem of alert fatigue.
And that is precisely why we're diving into a very specialized solution stack today. Threat Vision's high-fidelity indicators of compromised IOCs and their threat hunting tools.
Right.
The mission for this deep dive is to unpack what they are, what makes them so unique, and how they might just deliver a shortcut for you, the person on the front lines, to move toward what the source material calls a continuously effective defense. Okay, let's unpack this.
So when we talk about IOCs, their fundamental purpose, it's to be the fastest, most reliable way to spot malicious activity in your environment.
Good.
They're really designed to increase your detection accuracy and make the response process incredibly efficient. It's about lifting that burden of endless triage right off the security teams.
But the threat intel market is huge. I mean, every vendor promises high fidelity. So what specifically makes these IOCs unique? Where's the real differentiator?
I think what's fascinating here is the specialized, almost geographical focus. These are not generic indicators that you see everywhere. They're built on long-term, really focused tracking of threats that are specifically targeting the APAC region. And that level of specialization means they're identifying threats that are, well, they're custom-built, highly customized, and often pretty low volume. The kind of thing a generic global feed would miss completely because it hasn't, hit critical mass.
That distinction customized low-volume threats, that seems crucial. But does that mean analyst expertise becomes a bottleneck? If they're that specialized, how do they keep pace with the speed you need for automated defense?
That's the balance they strike. The source emphasizes that these are analyst-verified IOCs.
So a human is in the loop.
A human expert, exactly. They've already done the heavy lifting. They're turning these first-hand observations into indicators rich with exclusive behavioral context. So you're not just getting, like, a file hash, you're getting the whole story of the attack attached to it.
So the analysts ensure the quality, and the automation handles the speed.
Precisely. And that context is what gives you the efficiency gains. You can query any indicator and immediately get a full picture of the attack, the malware, and critically, the adversary behind it.
So an alert fires, and instead of spending hours trying to figure out what some obscure hash is,
the information is already there, it's pre-correlated. That context minimizes any friction in deployment, too. It just integrates directly into the defenses you already have.
let's talk about that integration. Because the efficiency seems to be built right into those 5 key features we saw. They sound like they're designed to be operational from day one.
They absolutely are. We can run through them pretty quick. You've got cross-scenario IOC application, which just means the data is useful everywhere, whether you're doing log analysis or blocking something at the firewall.
Okay.
Then there's the focus on high-fidelity data sources. That's the APAC-specific analyst-verified data we were just talking about.
Right, and then you have the actual mechanics of turning that great data into a real defense.
Exactly. Precise alert triggering, which is what tackles that false positive problem head-on. Then you have correlated intelligence integration. That's the ability to link a single alert to the whole campaign context.
And the last one is key for any overworked team.
For sure. Automated integration, making sure all these valuable indicators flow right into your existing SIM or TIP without anyone having to manually upload anything.
So if we tie these 5 things back to the listener, the person trying to save time and secure their budget, what are the actual tangible results?
Well, the benefits are really threefold, and they hit both tactical and strategic needs. First, you dramatically reduce false positives and alert fatigue. That frees up your analysts.
A huge win right there.
Second, the intelligence immediately links threats to their sources and the attack context. You go from, what is this, to who is doing this and why, in, like, seconds.
Much faster.
Third, it supports proactive threat detection and tracking, so your teams can actually get ahead of known campaigns. And because of the architecture, you get rapid deployment to strengthen your defenses almost instantly.
That clarifies the structure. But now we get into the really interesting part, the specialized categorization. Threat vision doesn't just give you one stream of IOCs. They break them down into two types, APT and CC. And here's where it gets really interesting, because how you use these defines your whole defensive strategy. Let's start with the APT IOCs.
Right, APT, Advanced Persistent Threat. You should think of these as the intelligence and espionage wing of cyber attacks. These indicators are focused on the most serious actors, the state-sponsored or mission-oriented groups.
So if your organization is in critical infrastructure, defense, or holds really sensitive data, these are essential.
Absolutely essential. The sources point out they're especially suitable for risk monitoring in those highly sensitive industries. They give you that complete context, the adversaries, the malware, the techniques that you need when you're up against a sophisticated opponent with, basically unlimited time and resources.
Then you have the other side of the coin, the CCIOCs, cybercrime.
Yep. And this is the bulk of what most of us see every single day. Large-scale, non-targeted cybercrime. This is your high-frequency stuff. Ransomware, big phishing campaigns, credential theft operations that just target everyone indiscriminately.
So if the APT IOCs are for tracking that specialized long-game digital espionage, the CCIOCs are for shoring up your defenses against the common threats that still take up, 90% of SOC teams' time?
Exactly. They improve your alert quality and help you fight back against those high-volume headaches.
And there's a nuance here in the classification that I think is really important.
There is, and it shows the depth of the intelligence. The rule is that the IOC classification is fundamentally based on whether the original incident was identified as an APT attack.
Okay, wait, let me make sure I'm getting this right for the listener.
Yeah.
So if a state-sponsored actor, an APT group, uses some commercially available ransomware, something you normally call a CC, does the indicator follow the payload or the actor?
It follows the actor, the intent. Even if cybercrime-related intelligence, like a common piece of malware, is found during the investigation of a state-sponsored op, the IOC still gets the APT classification.
So it's not just about the tool, it's about who's holding it.
Precisely. It's about understanding the high-level objective, the intent behind the operation. It tells you who you were targeted by, which is vital for risk modeling.
That makes a lot of sense. The attacker's identity is the most valuable context you can have.
So let's move from theory to impact. How are different organizations actually using these to meet their needs?
The application scenarios really show the flexibility. Let's take a high-tech manufacturer. Their needs cover everything from IP protection to supply chain security.
Pretty wide net.
Right. So they applied both APT and CC IOCs, but tailored the logic to their specific assets. The result, they improved alert accuracy by 40% and just drastically increased their efficiency because they stopped chasing ghosts.
Okay, so that's comprehensive coverage. What about organizations that need, say, high levels of traceability, like in the public sector? A great example. For a government agency that needed trusted indicators for threat awareness, the sources, they use the APT IOCs specifically to monitor a suspected nation-state actor.
So they knew who they were looking for.
Exactly. And that level of traceable analyst-verified intelligence is non-negotiable for them. They have to know the source of their intel is rock solid.
And then there's the opposite end, maybe. High-volume environments like financial services. Their main need is always better alert accuracy against just massive credential stuffing campaigns and things like that.
And for them, they leverage the CCIOCs heavily. By tuning those CC indicators, they could specifically detect anomalous logins tied to known cybercrime rings, which immediately cut down the risk of a data breach from those large-scale attacks.
Okay, so moving from detection to operations, automation. How does a large enterprise handle that?
Their core need was simple. Automated feeds to boost efficiency. So they just fed the IOCs right into their SIM with an API. Real-time updates, no analyst having to download and upload lists.
Eliminating that manual work is huge.
It's a game changer. And for incident responders, where the clock is always ticking, they queried the IOCs directly in threat vision.
For speed and context.
Exactly. They got the malware and adversary data right away and could build the context they needed to contain the threat in minutes, not hours.
And lastly, the MSSPs, the Managed Security Service Providers. They had to scale this across dozens of clients.
Right. And for them, it's all about standardization. They could ingest the IOCs in standard formats, STIX and CSV, which enabled rapid automated deployment across their whole client base. It really shows the solution isn't just about detection, it's built to solve organizational process problems.
Absolutely. So far, we've been focused mostly on detection and response, which is crucial. But you can't just wait for the alert, right? Teams have to be proactive. So let's shift gears to the other half of this, the threat hunting tools.
This is where we move from a reactive defense to a truly proactive posture. These tools are, they're like the analyst's secret weapon. They are ready-to-use tools detection rules, scripts developed by the Intel analysts to go scour your environment.
To find what?
To uncover attacker tools, backdoors, operational traces, stuff that might have slipped past your initial defenses.
What I appreciate is how they seem to address the real-world pain points of threat hunting. Like, we all know malware is constantly shifting. Relying on a single static signature is a losing game.
That's why the tools provide depth through multiple variants. They use detection rules like YARA, Snort, and Sigma.
So for anyone who might not use these daily, can you break that down?
Sure, YARA is great for scanning files and processes based on their characteristics. Snort is more for network intrusion detection. And Sigma is amazing because it translates detection logic into almost any SIME language.
So instead of a signature for one specific piece of malware, you're looking for the behavioral fingerprint of the whole attack family.
Precisely. You're identifying attacks based on behavior, not just a hash that changes every 5 minutes. But the biggest obstacle to hunting is always the sheer volume of logs you have to sift through.
The noise problem again. How do these tools solve that?
That's the beauty of the curated rules. They're designed by the threat vision analysts to pre-filter all the low-relevance logs and alerts.
So it cuts down the analyst's burden.
Drastically. It cuts down those secondary false positives you always get in a hunt, so the team can focus only on the real anomalies.
And I assume, like the IOCs, they come with context baked in.
They do. Just like the IOCs, these hunting rules come pre-packaged with correlated intelligence. So you find a tiny trace of an attack, and you immediately know the potential scope, severity, related adversaries, TTPs, all of it.
And it's practical. You don't need a whole new platform to use them.
Not at all. They're designed for immediate integration. You can deploy them right on your existing SIME or TIP. And that one-click download for tools categorized by target and rule type, it just speeds up the whole process, even for teams with limited resources.
Diving into those application scenarios, it looks like there are 3 key categories where these really shine. First, just the general application of rules, YARA, Snort, Sigma, to quickly find anomalies anywhere.
Right. The second is more specialized. Malware hunting tools. This is about actively searching for very high-risk malware families like ShadowPad that your traditional AV might miss, especially the variants common in the APAC threat landscape.
And the third is about getting ahead of the next attack. Vulnerability detection tools.
Yeah, these identify specific exploited vulnerabilities in your environment. It lets you assess the impact and proactively look for any malicious programs that might have already been planted through those known holes.
So for you, the security professional, what are the immediate benefits?
You quickly grasp the threat landscape in your own network because the hunt is focused. You significantly enhance detection of unknown attacks because you're looking for behavior. And importantly, you improve your vulnerability response. You can prioritize patching based on what's actually being exploited by real actors.
Let's end on the tools by clarifying who benefits. This feels like it goes beyond just the traditional threat hunter role.
It really covers the entire security lifecycle. Your SOC analysts can use them to filter alerts and verify IOCs. Your incident responders can match samples and TTPs to get context and attribution way faster.
And the engineers.
Security engineers integrate these rules to automate detection and harden the whole architecture. And maybe most strategically, the security decision makers get the data they need to justify investments and adjust resources based on what's actually happening out there.
So it's a complete loop.
Exactly. Using high-fidelity intelligence for both real-time detection and proactive searching.
So what does this all mean then?
Yeah.
We started with the problem of operational noise, alert fatigue, missed breaches. And we found a solution built around high-fidelity IOCs specialized in APAC threats, all verified by analysts.
And those IOCs break down into 2 critical types: the targeted mission-oriented APT IOCs and the large-scale high-frequency CC IOCs.
Then we paired that refined detection with proactive threat hunting tools, using standardized, ready-to-go rules, YARA, Snort, Sigma, that empower teams to actively search for hidden traces before an alert even fires.
At its core, The value is taking that specialized intelligence and combining it with practical, standardized rules that make for easy integration and a truly proactive defense.
Yeah, we focused on traceable intelligence, on cutting manual effort with automation, and on building rapid context for responders. It really sounds like a formula for turning a reactive, resource-draining defense into something efficient and focused.
And the whole discussion centered on telling the difference between those highly targeted state-sponsored attacks and the high-frequency cybercrime threats, and how important it is to classify them by the attacker's intent. But I want to leave you with one final thought on that distinction.
Okay.
The ability to quickly and reliably understand the original intent behind an attack, regardless of the tool used, is becoming the most valuable currency in security ops. If a nation-state actor starts using tools that look just like organized cybercrime, how valuable is truly traceable, high-fidelity context in stopping your team from misallocating resources on what you think is a financial threat when it's actually an espionage campaign? Getting that intent right, that's the ultimate shortcut.